fate. A seemingly simple idea on its own, but has caused millennia of debate among different philosophers throughout human history. The only thing we can certainly say about fate through the teachings of different philosophers is that it either exists or it doesn't. Even that statement itself is contradictory, since whether it does or doesn't exist from before I said that, it was already fated to exist or not to exist. Even if it were to not exist, it is now fated to not exist, therefore the fate of fate's existence was already fated to not exist. I think now you can begin to understand why this debate has had no conclusion. Based on the teachings of philosophers such as Aristotle, fate is exactly hard to pin down since it can feel more as a technical term. For example, if I said the world was going to end tomorrow, and it proceeds to end the next day, the statement was now true before any of the events took place. This means it is now impossible for these events to not happen, therefore the world was fated to end tomorrow as it was predetermined. This idea of how fate works seems more like a retrospective of future events, as it's not until after something happens when you can say it was fated to happen. This is apparent from Aristotle's De Interpretatione, where he goes on to say, if it was always true to say it was or would be, it could not be, or not be going to be. But if something cannot not happen, it is impossible for it not to happen, and what cannot not happen necessarily happens. Everything then that will be necessarily. He uses the battle at sea as an example to help describe and debunk those who believe that future telling is neither true nor false. The example goes that the first general believes that there will be a battle at sea the next morning, while the second believes that there won't be a battle. If a battle happens, then it would be idiotic to say that the first general wasn't correct the day prior, since a battle at sea does occur. So you could say it's necessary for a battle to or to not take place, but that doesn't mean that either options were necessarily going to happen. Case in point, both have a probability of occurring, and it's not until these events take place when you can say whether one was true and one was false. This contradicts what he was saying earlier, as if both have the possibility of happening, and it's not until the events take place when you can say whether one was true and false. That is no longer fate, and is free will. This is why I arrived at the conclusion that fate in our world is just up to interpretation, as most of the evidence we're given is mostly just technicalities. If I said the world was going to end tomorrow, and it does, it was fated to happen based on what Aristotle previously said. However, if I never said it were to happen or not, is it still fated? In Vento Areo, the fifth part of JoJo, it's debated whether fate can be changed, as before the Rolling Stones arc, it seems as if Giorno overcame his fate and defeated Diavolo. But after the Rolling Stones arc, which took place right after the fight between Giorno and Diavolo, it's revealed that everything that happened was fated to happen, so Giorno didn't change fate, but rather lived it. His fate being to defeat Diavolo. What I can say is that fate does exist in JoJo. The easiest ways to explain why is to look at the stance Thoth from Stardust Crusaders and King Crimson's ability of Epitaph. Thoth predicts events that are fated to happen in the future, and what is shown in the comic will happen and cannot be changed. This is shown when it predicted Jotaro would die by having his head split in half. At the time, Boingo had his head split in half when he was disguised as Jotaro, making it seem as if the prediction came true. But the prediction later came to fruition in the form of Bites the Dust. When Jotaro and the Moriocho gang were looking for Kira, Bites the Dust activated, killing Jotaro before turning back time by blowing up Jotaro and the gang, with his head splitting into two. This example goes to show that fate wasn't changed, but rather delayed, and we'll get back to this idea a little later. The other stand, King Crimson, has an ability that allows the user to see 10 seconds into the future, and whatever he sees will happen, and there's no changing it. The reason why this helps prove fate exists is because of the idea of becoming a sleeping slave to it. Humans, if they were to look into their future, can become obsessed with it. For example, if you saw yourself being successful in the future, you can become so obsessive and worried about getting to that point, you completely miss the path and opportunities you needed to take to get there, or just simply take the wrong path and opportunities in an attempt to get there. Fate prevents this outcome by turning you into a sleeping slave, making you unknowingly take the actions needed to get to that point. Even when you see an outcome you don't like, you will still unknowingly take the steps towards making that outcome a reality. That's where we get to the idea that fate itself can't be changed, but the actions that can lead to that fate can. Fate is determined by the actions taken, Bucciarati was fated to die as seen by the stand Rolling Stones, but after the subsequent defeat of Rolling Stones, it is revealed that now Narancia, Abbacchio, and Bucciarati are all fated to die. This change is simply because of Fugo. If Fugo was the one to meet with Giorno about Licia e Luca, only Bucciarati was fated to die. But because Bucciarati was the one to meet with Giorno, it was then determined that the previously mentioned three were fated to die. Remember, Rolling Stones didn't show Bucciarati till after he agreed to let Fugo take on the investigation, while he backed up Mista.
二人で行った方がよくはないですか？僕がついていきましょうか。
いや、俺がミスタと一緒に行こう。お前は涙目のルカの方を頼む。
わかりました。
スタンドだ。この件はスタンド使いが関わっている事件だ。そしてこれは何なんだ、この石は。
And then only showed Narancia, Abbacchio, and himself after he decided to look into Giorno by himself.
ねえ、ブチャラティ。俺が涙目のルカの調査やりますよ。
いや、お前の説明を聞くより調査の方が早く終わりそうだ。やはり俺一人でやれる仕事だな。
終わり。すべては終わりだって。逆らわずにローリングストーンズを受け入れれば安楽に終われたのに。
An easy explanation of this is if I walked into my room, then the sign by my door will fall on my foot. However, if I walked into the kitchen instead, then something else will fall on my foot and break. I'm not changing the first outcome, I'm changing my actions that result in a different outcome. To clarify, the first outcome still would have happened. I can't change the fact that the sign was going to hit my foot, but because of my actions, I created an entirely different outcome. So it was fated something will fall on my foot, but my actions determined what. This is where we get back to Oingo's Toth, as Jotaro was to have his head split in two, but the actions taken by characters changed when and how it would happen, but it was still to happen at some point. In a sense, that's what happened to Bucciarati. He was fated to die, but the actions of himself and the gang changed the circumstances of how he would die. Think of it like navigating. If you looked up directions to arrive at a destination, you will always arrive at that destination. Even if you turn left when you're supposed to turn right, you'll simply be rerouted. You'll keep being rerouted until you arrive at that destination being your fate. This works with the idea of the sleeping slaves. You'll keep making the actions that will cause your fate to become reality. Even if you try to avoid it, you will still unknowingly take the actions needed for it to become reality, despite trying to prevent it. That's where Diavolo comes into play. He was fated to be defeated, but because of his King Crimson ability, he was able to seemingly avoid it. When his outcome was not favorable, he simply skipped over it. Note, he didn't change it since it still took place, he just simply avoided it. His King Crimson ability in a way allowed him to continuously re-navigate himself to avoid his fate. He never changed it, just delayed it. The law of karma, which is often brought up because of Mista and his fear of the number 4 being unlucky, essentially means that everything we do creates a corresponding energy that comes back to us in some form or another. With Diavolo constantly dodging karma, it caused fate to use Giorno as a catalyst to deliver it to him. This is where Giorno and Polnareff's discussion after the final battle is important, as if you're fated to die, why live? Why would Narancia bother fighting for the gang if he's just going to die in the end and not be able to reap the rewards of his blood, sweat, and tears? It's because if you know you're fated to die, why not live to the fullest and make the most of it, so you can then pass on what you have learned and experienced to those who come after you. Much like how the people in your life who came before you showed you the different wonders of living and achieving your dreams, as well as bestow the wisdom they've learned through their mistakes so you would not repeat them. It's your duty to pass on that torch, that will to live, to those who come after you. The ones who carry on the will of those who have passed must keep moving forward, for that is the duty of those who have survived.
どうするそいつを。
去ってしまった者たちから受け継いだものはさらに先に進めなくてはならない。この矢は破壊しない。
矢は亀の中にしまえ。それでいい、ジョルノ。それでな。それが生き残った者の役目だ。行こうか。殺せ。
Man, oh jeez, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. This was pretty obnoxious to make because the amount of philosophy I had to go through, and a lot of it how how the same philosophers can contradict themselves. It was a very, very difficult thing because in JoJo, fate does exist. Well, in our world, it's still being argued whether it exists or not. So it's hard to for sure say that it exists while still not falling into the trap of free will, you know. It's just it was very difficult, but it was a lot of fun. And funny enough, when I was writing the script, it was during the time of daylight savings, and I was talking to my friend about the script, you know, trying to make sense of it, make sure it sounds good. And the clock jumped forward an hour, and when we hung up, he was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to bed." I'm like, "Why?" You know, he's like, "Oh, well, it's 3 o'clock." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude? It was 1 o'clock. And then I check and I look at the messages. You see it go from 1:59 to 3 o'clock. And I'm like, what the, it threw me off completely. I was wondering what the hell happened. And I'm like, did we just get fucking King Crimson, bro? And it was really funny. But yeah, no. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.